Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And today we are actually taking care of a leak, a very common leak on these M13 engines. The oil filter housing seal and the oil cooler seals have already are donezo. And this motor is slightly different as far as the housing and configuration of the cooling part and the oil filter housing. So it's a bit different from your standard, but the seals are still the same. Still the same part numbers as any other M113 engine. You got your oil filter housing seal and your oil cooler seals, inlet and outlet. The main difference is the cooling lines that run through here. There's an external cooler on this motor. And mainly, well, one reason that they did this for is the height changes as far as for the hood clearance. And with that being said, the actual oil filter cap is also way shorter. Now, like the traditional housing itself, the filter and the cap, including the stock, is completely different. Here is a typical one that you're familiar with. Very high plastic cap, a fleece filter, and a very elongated stock. As you can see, the filter itself is way shorter. It's not fleece, and the stock is relatively shorter by about 1.5 inches. The housing also is a little different. Now with that short and oil filter housing, there's a secondary cooler that's right over there in the passenger quarter panel right over here, or right in the front here, right of the bumper. It's a secondary cooler. A lot better than that little tiny micro cooler that some of the vehicles have, which are pretty shitty. Now, doing this job is very easy. It might be a little bit harder though, because some of you still have your secondary air injection pump, which obviously you can see I deleted it completely. But that's just an extra step that you have to overcome to do this simple job. Ignore the mess, but you're going to need a very special tool, or in this case, a very unusual socket. You're going to need a 46mm socket, which I had to buy again because I lost my original one. Ignore the plastic, I just have it there because it's covered in oil. Aside from that, you're going to need a T30 Torx bit socket and a 10mm. Reason being, there's going to be 4 10mm nuts here, and of course 4 T30 bolts off the oil cooler. Now this is the oil cooler block. This was attached right over here, and it really sits right next to the housing. As you can see, this is the oil cooler housing itself, and this is where the block connects to. You got your inlet and outlet right here with the seals. Where my pinky's at on both ends. Obviously it attaches to the block, and of course there's a valve right here, kind of like a thermostat, which goes by pressure. As far as when the oil is at a certain temp, it will open and allow it to circulate on the secondary cooler. This is that block that you will have to remove as well. Only has 4 bolts. 3 similar sized bolts, 1 elongated bolt. Very easy to, to remember where they go, so it's not a worry. 4 10mm nuts here, which pretty much secure the line right here to this bracket. There's 2 up here, 2 down there. Once you take those off, you're going to take off these other T30 Torx bolts here. This pretty much holds the oil cooler lines to the actual oil cooler block right here in the front. Once you get all that out of the way, pull the lines off, detach it from the bracket, and just set them aside, you can attempt to take the oil cooler housing right here, or the oil filter housing, sorry. Now, I did this with the engine cold. It's only held down by 70 Newton meters of torque, which is about 50 foot-pounds. Not too much. It doesn't take too much to remove. Obviously, you're just going to get your big 46mm socket here, slightly of a little bit of extension here, and a nice breaker bar. Set it up, set that socket in that housing very nicely. Make sure it's nice and secure. Put your extension, hold down with that socket with your other hand counterclockwise, and it should pop loose. Once it pops loose, you can just unscrew that nut, pop it out, and it should come right off. Now, keep in mind, when you do this, in the correct configuration would be, obviously, since you have your secondary air injection, remove your secondary air injection pump, It might not be necessary. You could probably, you might be able to get some wiggle room. I kind of forgot how it looked and how much stuck out here, but this might not need to be removed. But in case you do, well, go ahead and do so. In most cases, you're going to obviously remove your oil cooler lines, pop those out, take these 4 nuts out, completely remove the oil cooler lines out of place, remove them from the actual bracket, set it aside. From there, take the 4 bolts, those T30 bolts out of that oil cooler block. Once you do that, it should just come right off. Maybe a little bit of force because it is sucked down by the gasket itself. Take that out of place. And then once you do that, go ahead and remove a clip. There is a little clip right here that holds this hose in place. Obviously, you just need a screwdriver. It's a little nub there. Take the nub off. It pops out of place. Put your actual socket on, take out the nut, and it should come out easy. Once you do that, you have all 4 seals exposed. Swap the seals, do it in the reverse order. 70 Newton meters to torque this nut down. Everything else is hand tight where it's firm. It's probably about maybe 15 to 20 Newton meters of torque. I don't know the exact specifications, but for me, I just hand tight everything. Minus this one, this was 70 Newton meters on a torque wrench. Got that out squared away, and everything should be good to go. Obviously, clean your area, start the car, test for leaks. You should be good. You did the job.